All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We'll go ahead and get started here. We'll let people kind of start filtering in a little bit more, then we'll get started. Give everybody a minute to get in here. I just need to write that down real quick. All right, so if you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video. If you are on a smaller screen like a mobile device, if you're on a larger screen like a computer, it's going to be to the right of the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So if I look here, let's see here, questions posted today, less than an hour ago. Sorry, just trying to scroll through. We had a lot of questions yesterday. Got a lot of them answered. Sorry, just trying to get to the end of my list here. Okay, here we go. So we got Greg, starting here with Greg. Greg O posted the first question for today. So if you haven't gotten here late last night or something like that and you're waiting to see your question get answered, the way I do is I just answer questions that were asked up to an hour before. So if you're on here, no worries. If you want to get your question answered, just copy and paste it down in there. So like I said, we'll start with Greg O. It says, yesterday you demonstrated how the body rotation allowed you to maintain shaft lean through impact. You used an orange stick to do this. Stick to drill this. Can you explain how this motion compares to chipping and pitching? Or are you using body rotation to move the hands with these shots as well? Yes, if not so more. If it's a really small swing, because a chip can be very much like a putting stroke. If it's a very small swing, you can kind of do it just like a putting stroke, right? But when you add more speed, that club's going to want to flip, right? So if you kind of do a putting stroke with a swing that's this long, you can see how I have to bend my arm, right? If I'm not turning my shoulders kind of back, I have to really bend my arm. And then from here, it's really hard to not flip the club through there without getting some lag, right? So what you want to do, typically, if it's a short kind of shot, maybe maybe you got your 8-iron and it's just like a 10-yard chip, you can do it just like a little putting stroke. You can do it just like that, just because you don't need to hit the ball that hard. But when, if you're chipping with a wedge and you need to hit it a decent distance, you need to use your body to keep the hands in front. Otherwise, if you use all arms, you're going to tend to want to flip the club through, right? So you want to use the body. That's why I like to set up. I like to get my feet a little bit open, about a club width apart. And the reason why I want to have it set up with my body a little bit open is it's not just this, right? If it was a little short swing, I could do that. That would work just fine. But if I need to get any kind of speed to hit like a spinning kind of wedge shot or anything like that, I need to be moving my body and opening up and getting my hands in front at impact to make that happen. So yeah, you definitely want to be doing that for sure. You want to be using, if it's a short kind of shot, like I said, you can use a putting type stroke, but if not, you want to use your legs and rotate to get the body opening up. So Steve P says, thanks in advance, Q. No problem, Steve. Great to have you with us. So Frank M says, to draw the ball, you slightly close your stance and shoulders and play the ball slightly up in your stance. To fade the ball, you slightly open your stance and shoulders and play the ball slightly back in your stance. Is this correct? Slightly. So what I would try to think about is not what needs to happen to hit a fade and what needs to happen to hit a draw. So in order to hit a draw, you want the face to be close to your path, right? And then you need the ball to start to the right of your target, right? So if you're a right-handed golfer to draw, if this is my target line, let's just talk about what's technically happening. If this is my target line, right? So right on my, this is, imagine the ball was sitting right here, and this was my target line. So if I want the ball to draw on target, I need the ball to start to the right of the target and then curve back to the left. So the ball is going to start mostly in the direction of the club face, meaning wherever that club face is pointing, it has to be that direction the club face is pointing. That's where the ball is going to start mostly. It's not technically all of the direction of the face. So it's going to be 80-85% depending on the club that you're hitting. So if you're trying to hit a draw and on target, the ball has to start to the right. So that means that the face actually has to be open to your target. But in order to get it to draw, it has to be closed to your path. So if you think about it this way, if my face, let's say I start the ball 3 degrees to the right, right? So I start the ball 3 degrees to the right. That means that my face is going to be 3 degrees open at impact. That means that my path needs to be 6 degrees to the right. If it's going to draw back, it needs to be double, right? So if my face, or if my target line's right at the target, right, my face is 3 degrees open, that means that my path needs to be 6 degrees into out at impact to get the ball to start 3 degrees to the right of the target and then curve back to the target. If my path was 4 degrees, right, then it wouldn't draw all the way back. And if my path was, let's say my path was 10 degrees and my face was 3 degrees closed, it would overdraw. It would draw too much, right? So if we understand what's happening at impact, then you understand what maybe setup adjustments you may make. Because just making setup adjustments doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to hit a draw. I can set up with my body really closed off and put the ball position in all kinds of places, and I can still swing over the top with an open face. It's maybe more difficult to do that, but I can still make it happen, right? So just setting up, basically what I'm trying to say here is just setting up in a certain way isn't going to guarantee that you're going to hit a certain shot, right? So I will generally set up my body in the direction that I want the ball to start. And then I will close the face more or open the face more, right? Depending on the kind of shot that I'm trying to hit. I don't typically change the ball position very much unless I'm trying to hit kind of an extreme kind of shot. If I'm trying to hit a slight draw or a slight fade, which is usually what I'd be trying to do, I'm not changing the ball position. But if I'm trying to really hook one or really fade one, slice one, I'll move the ball position. So as far as the setup adjustments, I would say that those would go hand in hand with hitting a draw and a fade. The one that you mentioned, if you're hitting a draw, it's typically better to kind of have a closed off body because that makes it easier to swing the club more from the inside compared to your target line, right? And an open stance gets it to where you can get that path working more out to in compared to the target line and get that face a little bit open as you're coming in. So yes, the setup adjustments can help, but that's not going to, like I said, it's not going to guarantee anything. And then the ball position, you're a little bit backwards on that. So usually moving the ball position more back in the stance makes it easier to hit a draw, because if you think about my club path, right? So if my club is kind of coming down like this hula hoop here, right? It's coming down. Well, it's going to be working. If the ball is more further back in my stance, my club's going to be working more out to the right. So if you imagine my club's going to be working more out to the right, which is going to give me more of a draw kind of tendency. If the ball's more forward in my stance, I'm going to have more of a left out to in kind of path, and that's going to lead to more of a slice tendency. So ball position would be more forward. Now, you just got to play around with it to find if putting the ball position forward is something for you. Like I said, I don't like to do that unless I really need to slice one a ton. But I like to do it mostly with my stance and swinging along. I need to be swinging along my stance and then getting that face more closed or more open, right? So if I'm hitting a draw, I'm going to strengthen my grip, right, which is going to close the face down. I'm going to feel like I'm really kind of covering the ball as I'm coming down, like I'm really getting that club face more hooded as I'm coming in. And I'm going to have my stance a little bit more closed off, and I'm going to swing down my stance. So I'm going to swing more out to the right, and I'm going to kind of feel like I'm hooding that face down. When I'm hitting a fade, again, I'm going to be still feeling like I'm swinging down my feet here. I don't want to come over the top. I want to still feel like I'm swinging to the inside compared to my feet, but out to in compared to my target line. And I'm going to feel like I'm really going to push my hands forward, and I don't cover the fall. I just push my hands forward, which is going to open the face if I do that. And that allows me to still have good shaft lean as I'm coming into contact and have the face open. If I try to come in and flip and have my face very open, I'm going to hit a really, really weak fade, which is not what I want to do. But the main thing here is we want to understand is that just setting up a certain way doesn't guarantee anything. You have to understand what's happening to create the ball flight, and then you make adjustments for yourself that allow you to do that. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. There's no right or wrong way to do it as long as you're getting those things that happen at impact that need to happen, to produce the ball flight that I just talked about. Cordy J says, I tend to lift up the putter before I start back. Any tricks or solutions for this? So you kind of have to do that to a certain extent. If you're resting the putter on the ground, right, at address, if you're resting the putter, right, on the ground, you actually do have to lift it up off the ground a little bit to bring it back. So that's something that you have to do, because you can't keep it on the ground because otherwise it's going to drag on the ground, right? So you have to kind of lift that putter up as you bring it back. One thing you can do is you can kind of pre-lift it, right? You can set it up and then have the putter kind of lifted and then start your stroke going back. There's a lot of putters that do that. Ricky Fowler does that. Ricky Fowler kind of has the putt. He sets it up, right? And then lifts the putter up off the ground, then starts the stroke. I have the putter on the ground, and then as I'm getting ready to bring it back, I lift the putter up slightly and then bring it back just slightly. So you do need to lift up the putter. You can't keep it on the ground. So I would either just understand that you got to lift the putter up slightly before you bring it back, or I would just kind of hover it and then bring it back, kind of like what we see Ricky Fowler do. All right, so let's keep going here. So Ducky 2018 says, in my area, the bunkers are like concrete. What advice for getting out of greenside and especially fairway bunkers? So for a greenside bunker, if it's like concrete, basically what you have to do is, in a normal bunker, you want to be using the bounce. So that way the wedge doesn't dig into the sand. So if you imagine it this way, a water skier, right? If a water skier is water skiing and they got the nose of the skis out of the water, they're just going to glide on top of the water. But the moment they get those nose of the skis down in the water, what are they going to do? They're going to dive in. So that's kind of what the bounce is doing on your wedge. If you have this bounce exposed, which if you're not familiar with what the bounce is, that's this hunk of metal that's on the bottom. When you're hitting a bunker shot, you want to set up with that face wide open. So that way it exposes that bounce more. So that way it will hit that sand and glide through the sand. If you have it where you have shaft lean and you have this leading edge kind of hitting the sand first, it's going to do like the nose of the skis does when it hits the water. It's going to dive into the sand. The club's going to get lost in the sand. You're going to chunk it. You're not going to get out. You want that club to glide through the sand. Well, that works well when you have kind of normal sand, where it's maybe on the soft side, and it allows you to kind of go through it. But if you have concrete kind of sand, if you do that, if you expose the bounce a lot, you have this face wide open and have the bounce hit it, it will just bounce off of it, right? And then you'll scold it. You'll hit it with the knife. So you need it to dig a little bit. Something you're going to have to practice. But instead of setting up with the face wide open like that, what you would maybe do is set up with the face a little less open. So instead of having the face 45 degrees open like that, I'd maybe go down to about half of that and hit a little bit closer to the ball. So generally you can hit, 2, 4, sometimes up to 6 inches, depending on the kind of shot that you're hitting. If you're kind of hitting kind of a chunk and run shot, you have to swing pretty hard, but you can hit 6 inches behind the ball and get it out and get it running toward the hole. But generally, you're going to be hitting 2, 3, 4 inches behind the golf ball for a bunker shot, for a normal bunker shot. So with this kind of shot, you're going to be hitting. You can't hit quite as far behind the ball. You have to hit a little bit closer to the ball. So you need to be hitting 1 to 3 inches probably behind the ball, and let that club kind of get into it a little bit. What I would also try to feel like, instead of feeling like your club is gliding through the sand, I would get your body more forward, your body weight more forward, and feel like you're hitting more down into it to help the club kind of dig and get underneath the ball, right? So normal bunker shot, wide open club face. You're pretty centered. You're hitting, 2 to 6 inches behind the golf ball, depending on the kind of shot you're going to hit. You're letting the club glide through the sand. Concrete sand, harder sand, you want to, depending on how hard it is and things like that, it's just something you have to practice. You open the face less to allow the club to dig a little bit, get your body forward, hit a little bit closer to the ball, and try to feel like you're hitting down and through the ball a little bit more, and go practice that. As far as hitting out of a fairway bunker, it's really not going to be any different for a concrete bunker versus a soft sand bunker. It actually is probably going to be a lot easier to hit out of a concrete kind of bunker in the fairway than it would be a soft bunker. Because when you hit into a soft bunker, you hit it very similarly to the way that you would a normal shot out of the fairway. It's just that you have to be more precise with your contact. If you hit behind the golf ball at all, you're going to be in trouble. The club's going to dig. You're going to hit it fat. So out of a fairway bunker, you want to make sure that you get ball first contact. So a couple adjustments that you can make. What I would recommend doing is taking one extra club and then choking down on that club. The reason why you do that is it gives you a little bit more control of what's going on. The other thing that I would do is I would play the ball more in the middle of your stance. So for a standard, kind of fairway iron shot, right, you're going to have the ball about straight down from your lead ear. That's a pretty good ball position. So that's a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance. To promote more of because it's so important to get ball first contact, to promote more of a ball first contact, I'd move the ball more in the middle of your stance. So choke up, extra club, choke up on the club, and put the ball a little bit back in your stance. Dig your feet in a little bit to give you a little bit of stability. Rush anything, because if you do that, you may move your feet around and you're going to have a hard time hitting it solid. So really try to take a very smooth and rhythmic swing. Ensure you make ball first, get out of that that fairway bunker fairly easily. But if you're hitting out of a kind of a concrete kind of fairway bunker where it's really hard, you can get away with a little bit more of a miss because the club's not going to want to dig into it as much, right? It might even, I'm not sure if I've ever even hit a full swing shot out of a kind of a concrete kind of bunker before or not. I'm not sure if I have, but I would imagine that, in some situations, it might even be easier to hit a shot out of that kind of lie than it would be out of a fairway, because out of a fairway, that club will dig. But if you're in a concrete kind of situation, it won't dig, right? The only thing that may happen is it may bounce off. If you hit behind it too much, it may bounce off of there, and you may skull it or top it or something like that. So you just want to ensure that you get ball first contact on those. So one other thing you can do is kind of keep the body forward. You know, you can take an extra club and kind of take a 3/4 swing, keep the body forward, ball back in the stance, and kind of really make sure you hit down and through. That'd be another adjustment you can make. So Mark P says, is a stable fluid spine angle forever? I hit my 60-degree 8-iron without thinking and struggle with my 7 to 3 iron, woods, and drivers. So yeah, the stable fluid spine applies to all clubs. So as far as the stable fluid spine is concerned, the stable fluid spine, if you're not familiar with it, it's the first piece of the Totsby Golf system. It's where we talk about having a little bit of spine angle at address, right? And then as you go up to the top of the swing, you want to retain that spine angle. Then as you come into contact, so when I say spine angle, I'm meaning really the overall angle of your body is about the same. So if you look here, the overall angle of my body is slightly angled away. If I go up to the top, the overall angle of my body is slightly angled away. Then if I come into contact, because I shift my hips forward some, and my head doesn't shift forward as much, and my body is opening up, you can see how I get a little bit more spine angle as I'm coming in. If you look at from my belt buckle to my shirt buttons here, with my body opening up and my hips moving forward a little bit, my head staying down on the ball, you can see how I've got more spine angle here. And this applies to all clubs. Now with the driver, you can have a little bit more spine angle angled away to promote more of an upward angle of attack on the golf ball, right? So with the driver, you can be a little bit more angled away at address. You can be a little bit more angled away, at the top. You can be a little bit more angled away coming into contact, right? This might be what you would look like at contact with the driver, right? And this might be what you would look like at contact with the wedge. You're going to be a little bit more on top of it. So it's just you're still going to have the stable fluid spine. You still want to remain stable and rotate. It's just that you may be a little less angled away for a wedge and a little bit more angled away for a driver, just because of the kind of ball flight that you're hitting, right? Your narrower stance with a wedge, typically hitting more down and through the ball. With a driver, wider stance, usually hitting more up into the ball or more level with the ball. And that spine angle can control that a little bit. All right, so let's keep going here. Keep your questions coming. Looks like we just have one more in here right now. So we had a lot of questions yesterday. We went long yesterday. Maybe we'll go short today if we don't have any questions. But Joel W says, "Hey Q, any tips for hitting my longer hybrids irons more consistently? I can get comfortable with my 20 and 23 degree hybrids. They just keep wanting to slice. Should I move the ball back in my stance with these longer clubs?" So yeah, if you're slicing it, putting the ball more back in your stance can definitely help. You don't want to go too far back into it because that'll promote more of a chopping down kind of position. So one thing we ought to understand is that the longer the club is, the more difficult it is to hit, right? There's a reason why it's a lot easier to hit a pitching wedge than it is a driver, because there's less loft with the driver, which makes it harder to hit. You're hitting it further, right? The club is longer, so it's harder to control. There's just lots of factors in there. So one thing we want to understand is that you can't expect the same kind of consistency with your hybrid as you do like your 6-iron or your 8-iron or your pitching wedge, just because it's just by nature, it's going to be less consistent. But saying that, if you're slicing those clubs, what that means is that your face is open to the path. Right. So when you're coming into contact, your club face, the direction the club face is pointing at impact, is open to the direction the club head is moving through impact. So the face is the direction the club face is pointing, and then the path is the direction the club head is moving. All right. So your face is open to that path. So what you need to do is you need to get the face close to the path. You need to swing more from the inside with the face closed. Right. So what I'd recommend doing is with your hybrid, work through that never slice again course, because that course is all about getting you to swing more from the inside with the face closed. As far as the ball position is concerned, we talked about earlier, someone was talking about the setup for a fade and a draw. If you put the ball more forward in your stance, it's going to tend to promote more of an out to in path. So if you have the ball really far forward in your stance with a hybrid, that could be promoting that path, right? So moving the ball a little bit more back may help you to get that club to work more from the inside. The reason why you see a lot of people put the hybrid more forward in the stance is because they can be, depending on your club head speed, it can be difficult to get that ball up in the air. So if you have a lot of shaft lean, or you don't have a lot of speed, or maybe you have both, putting that ball more forward in your stance will help you get that ball more up in the air. But if you're slicing it, then that's more than likely not the issue. You need to get you need to keep it from slicing. So if as long as you're not putting it like way back here and chopping down into the ball, and kind of getting a smother hook with it, then yeah, I would recommend moving it more back in the stance. If you have it really far forward, that could be a reason why you're slicing. Get that ball more, a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance, straight down from the lead ear is a good spot for it. Swing from the inside with that closed face using the drills from the Never Slice Again course. And to get to that course, click the house icon at the top. That'll take you to the homepage. If you scroll down the homepage, you'll see all the courses that are included with your membership. There's 20 plus courses there. Select the course that you need, the Never Slice Again course. So Mark P says, strong grip for every club too. I tend to use a stronger grip for my driver. Too much thinking involved. No, I mean, you can use a strong grip for every club. A lot of it depends on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit a lot of times. But, I would say most players are going to benefit from a stronger grip. You can be successful with either one, but most people are going to benefit from a stronger grip because most people have difficulty getting the club face closed. So if you're leaving the club face open, I definitely recommend a stronger grip. That's just an easy adjustment to make. I love any adjustment that's just a setup thing that you can do that fixes the problem, right? It doesn't guarantee that it's going to fix the problem, but hey, if it does, that's the easiest thing to do. It's way better. It's way easier to do that than to change something in your backswing or downswing or coming into impact, because things are moving so fast throughout the swing. It's hard to change things. So you really have to break them down, go slow like we do in the top speed golf system. But if you can just make a small setup change or a grip strength change, then that can make it a lot easier. So if you're struggling with getting the club face closed on your other clubs, then yes, highly recommend a stronger grip. It may just fix the issue completely. But it's not a requirement. You can be successful. Colin Morikawa has a very weak grip. When I say weak, if you look at Colin Morikawa, he basically has his thumbs going right down the top of the shaft. So he's like this. See, my thumb is right on the top of the shaft, so that'd be a weak grip. When he comes into contact, he has to come into contact like this. If you look at his slow motion impact, look at his lead wrist is very bowed. He has to do that because his grip is very weak. If he had a stronger grip, let's say he had a super strong grip, right? Like a Paul Azinger, super strong grip. When Paul Azinger comes into impact, he doesn't have to bow that wrist as much. It's actually pretty flat. If you look from this angle, it's flat. It looks like it might be cupped from this angle, but it's not actually cupped. It's more on the flat side, right? You can see that position puts me, puts me with a square face and lots of shaft lean. So if you're struggling with getting the face closed, stronger grip is usually going to be better for you. So you can be successful with either one. You have to find what works best for you. So Jerry R says, I know grip pressure is a variable from setup to impact. Can you chart yours between these two positions? I'm thinking pretty light through most of the swing, but a bit more pressure at impact. Thanks for the great sessions. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're going to have more. Basically, the faster this club is moving, the more pressure you have to put into the handle. Right? That's basically the easiest way to think about it. The faster the club is moving, the more pressure you have to put into this club. So at impact, that's where the club's moving the fastest. That's where you're going to have the most pressure into the club. If you have, let's say you're like a 2 out of 10 address. Well, if you went into impact with that same 2 out of 10, you literally kept that same 2 out of 10, that club would be flying out of your hands by the time you get up to the top of the swing. There's no way you're even going to get to impact. You're gonna get, if you went 2 out of 10 throughout the swing, you'd be throwing the club behind you by this point. So you put enough pressure into the club to be able to hold on to it, but you don't want to put so much pressure into the club that you can't use the momentum of the club, right? That you get completely tightened up and you can't swing it. So most people are going to do this fairly instinctually. And a good way to kind of prove this to yourself is to hold the club out in front of you like this and put as little pressure as you possibly can to be able to hold the club up in the air. So if I didn't put enough pressure into it, it would just fall out of my hand, right? If I put too much pressure into it, then I would feel that I'm putting too much pressure. I just want you to kind of lighten up on the pressure. Hold it out in front of you and lighten up on the pressure as lightly as you can, but not to drop the club. Now I have a friend come up and pull on that club. And what you're going to find is that instinctually, you're going to put more pressure into that handle. Otherwise, they're going to pull it out of your hand, right? If you kept that same pressure when your buddy comes up and pulls it out of your, tries to pull it out of your hand, he's going to pull it up out of your hand. So you're going to instinctually put pressure into the grip. So you're feeling the club speeding up and you're feeling putting more pressure into the handle. I think people really overthink the pressure into the handle. It's really an instinctual thing. It's to swing the club fast, you have to put more pressure into the handle, right? So it's really an instinctual thing. It's not really something that you're thinking, okay, I'm 2 out of 10 here, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Everything's happening too fast. You can't really think about that throughout the swing. It needs to be instinctual. So John S. says, finally getting the club shallowed out at the right time with my swing. Turning the doorknob tip with a couple drills works well. I can hit good shots off the dirt. Don't need perfect lie anymore. Awesome. That's great to hear, John. Sounds like you're on the right track there. So keep up the hard work. All right, so let's keep the questions coming. If we got more questions, we got 25 minutes or so left. So if you got more questions, keep them coming. If not, we'll just kind of sit here in silence until anybody. Well, actually, let's do this. There was like a question or two that was posted before. So at 3 a.m, somebody's up thinking about this, or maybe it's somewhere across the world. But Kristen A says, how do I hit the ball with, for example, a 5 metal wood? Is it different from using an iron? We had a similar question to this yesterday. Someone asked, difference between hitting a hybrid versus, an iron. Is there any real difference there? And the reality is any shot that you're hitting off of the turf, there really isn't going to be much of a difference. You're going to be taking the same swing. The only, as I mentioned earlier, someone asked about, how to hit their hybrid better. You may want to put the ball position more forward if you're having trouble getting the ball up in the air. So when you put the ball more forward, it helps you, 1, to come in more level with the ball, and 2, to release the club a little bit more before it gets to the ball, which adds a little bit loft, which makes it easier to get up in the air. So if you hit it like a wedge, a wedge you typically have somewhere in the middle of your stance, about the middle of the stance. You're hitting more down and through the ball, taking a bigger divot. You don't want that ball to go, you wouldn't want to hit a wedge unless you're trying to hit it up over something, but you wouldn't want to hit a wedge, really far up in your stance and, release it and add a ton of loft because the ball won't go anywhere. It'll just go straight up in the air. So that'd be about the only thing I would say is you may want to move the ball a little bit more up in the stance if you're having trouble getting it up in the air. But other than that, there really isn't any difference. It's just you can't expect to hit a 5 iron, or excuse me, a 5 wood as good as your pitching wedge. It's just by nature, it's going to be more difficult. It's not necessarily that, you're swinging the club wrong. It's just that you may not have built the skill to be able to be really good with the 5 wood yet. You just got to keep working toward being more consistent with that. So let's scroll back down, see if there's any new questions. All right, so we got another one from Mark P. So Mark P says, should I focus more on starting my downswing with my hips or with my arms? It really just depends on what's going on with your swing. I can tell you what's literally happening is more with the lower body is what starts the downswing. It's not the arms. Most people need to focus on that quite a bit, but everyone's feel is relative. So if you're someone who, for example, if you're someone who really gets the hips out in front and you kind of get the arms kind of stuck behind you, right, and you kind of come in like this, Tiger used to have a problem with this. He used to, it was on some show on the Golf Channel a long time ago where he was talking about how he needed to feel like his arms were getting out in front and everything. That's a feeling. That wasn't the reality of what was happening, but that's a feeling that he had to have. But most amateurs don't struggle with that. Most amateurs struggle with the opposite. Most amateurs struggle with getting the arms too much out in front, over the top, that sort of thing. So you probably need to focus more on the lower body, but all feels are relative. So what you necessarily need to focus on may be different for you versus somebody else, but what's literally happening is you definitely want the lower body. It's all starting from the ground up, right? So we're putting pressure into the ground. We're moving to our lead side. We're getting pressure into the ground as we're getting up to the top. And now we're pushing into the ground. The hips start to rotate. Our chest starts to rotate. Our arms start to go. The wrists start to go. The club starts to go. That's kind of the sequence of things that are happening. If we're at the top here and we start with the arms first, it's too late. You're just going to release early, be on your back foot, lose all your power, most likely come over the top, chunk it, thin it, that sort of thing. So what you literally want to do is get to your lead side, use the legs and the hips. But like I said, it really depends on, everyone needs to adjust their feel to get the desired result that they want, right? So that's what Tiger did. Tiger adjusted his feel to get the desired result that he wanted. If he thought about using the legs more, it'd just get him even more stuck, right? So that's not necessarily going to be the best feeling for everybody, but for most people, that probably is a good feeling. All right. So like I said, we got about 20 minutes left here. We don't have any questions left. I don't have any more. All the ones that are left over on there are ones that I answered yesterday. So if you got your questions, go ahead and post them in there. If not, I'll just kind of sit here and wait for you to answer a question. I'll stay on here till right at noon. But if we don't have any questions, then I will just check my email a little bit. So Jerry R says, is Bryson's straight arm swing a takeoff of Mo Norman's swing pattern? I mean, there are some similarities there, but I wouldn't say it's the exact same. Bryson's swing is way more powerful than Mo Norman. Mo Norman didn't really hit the ball real far. I mean, compared to the average person, he did, but compared to tour players, he didn't really hit the ball that far. So Mark P says, what tip do you have for hitting more in the center of the face instead of towards the toe? So what I would recommend doing there is kind of like what we were talking about a minute ago, is adjusting. A lot of what golf is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. That's really, if you can develop the skill to be able to adjust your feel to get the desired result, then you can play good golf. So the reason why that's a skill is because you have to feel something that is wrong, right? That is wrong to get something that is correct. That's why it's kind of a skill, because it kind of seems backwards. So what would you need to feel that is wrong to get the correct result? Well, if you're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face, but the reality is that you're hitting it off the toe, then what I would try to do is I would line up the way you normally would and then intentionally try to hit the ball off the heel. And if you do that, then your strike will more than likely be in the center of the face. And if you still hit it off the toe, then I would exaggerate it more, right? And if you just try to exaggerate it so much that you still can't do it, I'll go over what you may want to do then to kind of trick yourself. But that's what you want to do. Now, you keep doing that until you actually start hitting the ball on the heel, because your feel is going to change, right? So your feel is going to change a little bit. And when you do that, you're adapting, right? And then you kind of have to keep adjusting your feel, right? So if you actually start hitting the ball off the heel, then you can ease off the feeling. Essentially, you're calibrated at that point. When I go and play, I always try to hit some balls to kind of get a feel for my swing. Some days, maybe I'm leaving the face open a little bit. Some days, maybe I'm hitting the ball a little bit off the heel, off the toe. Maybe some days I'm hitting the ball a little bit thin. I have to, when I go out on the course, I'm thinking, okay, I have to adjust my feel to get a better shot. Or even throughout the round, things are changing a little bit, right? So I'm adjusting it as I'm going through the round. Because when you go through a round, sometimes you get tired a little bit. So last time I played, I had, toward the end of the round, I pulled my last couple drives. So I think I was just kind of coming over the top a little bit, probably coming down a little bit steep. So I had to really, on the last hole, I really focused on swinging more into out, and it straightened it out. So a lot of it is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result. So you keep doing that until you actually start hitting the ball in the center or in the heel, and then you ease off of it to get that back in the center. Now, if you're really having trouble with that, one thing I would recommend doing if you're hitting it off the toe is this is a pen, but you can use a pen so you can see it more easily. But what you can do is you can place a tee about an inch on the outside of your ball. Now, what you do is you'd line up to your ball here and then come in, line up to the ball as if you're going to hit it, and then try to hit that tee right in the center of the face. And you can see when I do that, that moves that strike to the hosel. Now, in trying to do that, am I actually going to hit off the hosel? Most likely not. I'm probably going to hit it more in the center of the face. And then if I actually do, right, I'll just move this tee a little bit closer, right? And then if I get to where I'm starting to hit the ball in the center of the face, now I'm going to move that tee out of the way. I'm going to try to get that same feeling with it there. So that's what I would recommend doing. One other thing you can do is you can place a ball on the inside of your club to kind of push the club out that way. So if you place another ball, because we do a lot of things to avoid discomfort, right? So if I have the ball set up here, I know it's going to be really, really uncomfortable for me if I hit this ball off the hosel. So I'm going to make sure that I get the club out there so that I miss this ball. So that's another thing that you can do. So you can set up a ball to avoid it, or you can set up a tee to actually try to hit the tee on the other side of the ball. So that's a trick that you can do. But obviously you want to work toward being able to do it without it there. All right. So we got some questions coming in here, which is good. JR says there are 2 new ones posted. Yeah, I think there might be a little bit I saw the questions. I'm guessing there's a little bit of lag between, what's happening live on my end and what you're seeing on your end. There is a ball where is the ball in my stance, and where is my weight? Which leg is the weight on? So the ball is going to be a little bit more on the forward side of your stance. So your stance is going to be pretty wide, and you want to have the ball more forward in your stance. The reason for that is because you're going to be hitting the sand back here, right? So if you have the ball in kind of the normal sand, you're going to be hitting too close to the ball. You may scold it out, right? So you want to have it a little bit more forward of your stance. More, just inside of that lead foot is typically a good spot. Now, if you're coming down very steeply into the sand, then I would be pretty level. If you're coming in and you're hitting the sand too early, right? You're hitting the sand too far back here. I maybe get your weight a little bit more forward, right? And feel like you're hitting down and through the sand a little bit more. But ball position inside the lead foot, maybe a few inches inside the lead foot. Hit the sand, anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. You can hit 6 inches behind the ball if you swing hard and you have soft sand. But that's what you want. And then you're hitting the sand behind the ball, and lean forward if you're hitting too far behind the ball, or stay level if you're hitting the sand where you want to be hitting it. So Steve P says, Wedge in hand to a green at a lower elevation, lead foot below trail foot. How do you prevent sculling the ball over the green? Any conscious swing adjustments? What I would try to do is go with the slope. Don't fight the slope. So don't try to take like a level swing on the slope that's like this. Get your body with the slope, down with the slope. Realize that if it's a really downhill kind of slope, if you're hitting on like a downhill lie, the ball's going to come out lower because that downhill lie is essentially de-lofting the club. So be prepared for the ball flight to come out lower. It may even go a little bit further, right? Because it's de-lofting a little bit, because the hill's de-lofting a little bit. So go with the slope. You can put the ball a little bit more back in your stance to compensate a little bit, but don't set up, don't try to set up where you've got spine angled away from the target, and you're doing that because you're going to hit the ground way before the ball, or you're going to maybe miss the ground and skull the ball. So go with the slope, get your body forward, get your spine angle with the slope, right? Swing down and through with the slope, put the ball a little bit further back in your stance. Expect that ball to come out lower and a little bit hotter. These are, these are skills that you kind of have to learn through experience. So if you're out on a practice round sometime, put a couple balls down and practice that shot a little bit. If you're just out playing by yourself or something like that, uphill slope, it's a very similar thing. Go with the slope. You may want to. One thing that I like to do on an uphill slope is I'll actually take more club. The reason for that is that because it adds loft. So if you're hitting a wedge off of an uphill lie, that thing's going to go a mile up in the air if it's like a full swing. It was kind of funny yesterday. I didn't play yesterday. I played Sunday. I had myself in a little predicament, got a little bad luck. The ball kind of embedded into the face. It wasn't embedded, but it was kind of sitting on the face of a bunker. Very, very steep lie. I had about 60 yards to the hole or something like that. And it was uphill, but I couldn't de-loft it because the bank was in the way. Normally if I had that kind of uphill kind of lie, I would, swing with the slope and maybe use like an 8 or a 9 iron to hit it so that way it doesn't go too high in the air. But I had no choice. I had to hit a wedge. So I took my lob wedge. I swung as hard as I possibly could, and it went a mile up in the air. And ended up getting it on the green. But, that kind of situation would be, I had to do it. But in a normal situation, I would take less clubs so that way the ball doesn't go so far up in the air. It's much easier to control. So, again, I'm going with the slope. I'm going to get more spine angle away from the target. I'm going to feel like I'm swinging up the slope. I'm going to understand that the ball is going to come out higher. So I might use more club with less loft to kind of compensate for that and just take like a shorter swing. So choke up, choking up on the club, taking more club, taking a shorter swing to kind of compensate. Again, a skill that you have to learn to kind of get a feel and understanding for how far that shot's going to go. You got to practice it, right? So, and then all slopes are going to be different. If you have a much steeper slope, the higher it's going to go. The steeper slope down, the lower it's going to go, right? So, it's just something you got to practice. So if you get a chance, go out there and make some adjustments and go with it. So John says, how do you target the bottom of the arc with a driver? What is the spine angle at that point? So at impact with the driver, your spine angle should be in that 18 to 25 degree range, right? So, and you're not really targeting the low point. If your compression line is angled away as you're coming in, that low point, and you have the ball position more forward, that low point is going to be happening before the ball. It's not like you're thinking, I'm targeting it right there and it's coming up. It's more, I have my compression, my spine's angled away, my compression line is slightly angled away, my ball position's forward. That's going to get me to where I'm hitting up on the ball. The only way it wouldn't be is if you're swinging way over the top. When you swing way over the top, it moves the low point of your swing forward, right? When you swing more from the inside, it moves the low point of your swing more away from the target. So if you're coming down on plane, you have the ball position, off your lead foot, you have your spine angle in that 18 to 25 degree range, your compression line in that slightly angled away range, you're going to be hitting up on the ball. You don't need to target, where that's happening, All right, so we'll answer a few more here. I do have to go right at noon, so I won't be able to stay after. We had kind of a lull in the middle there where there could have been a lot of questions. Wish we would have got some at that time, but hopefully we can get the rest of these in. So no video or sound. Hopefully you got video and sound now. But says, I have a tendency to open my hips too much in the backswing. I'm very flexible. Any ideas to correct this? Overturning lends itself to starting the downswing with my arms. What you can do is you can turn your feet in a little bit. So if you have your feet angled out, you can have your feet more squared off, and that will restrict your hips a little bit from turning. That's what I would recommend doing. I would also keep your feet planted on the ground. Don't let your trail heel come up if you're trying to restrict this. Now, keep in mind, this sounds like a specific thing to this person. Most people are not in this situation. So I don't recommend this for most people. But if you are overturning your hips, which I would actually say is probably very difficult to do, I would actually work with an instructor to make sure that you're actually overturning your hips. That's not another issue in your swing. Because I'd much rather you be able to turn your hips. But if you are actually overturning your hips, meaning you're kind of going like this, like turning your hips 90 degrees, then I would square off your feet to make it more difficult to turn, and I would keep your heel on your lead heel on the ground, so that way, because you might have things opened up and be going like this, right? And that's going to make you kind of overturn a little bit. Roger B says, last weekend's tourney had a par 3 with 20 yards of elevation drop, and they were playing 220 yards at 200. Wouldn't the actual distance change be less? Most likely, yeah, it probably, just 20 yards of elevation drop isn't going to make it play 20 yards shorter usually. But, there could be other factors there, wind, temperature. The ball's going to carry further higher elevation. The ball's going to carry, longer and high temperatures. If there's wind behind you, the ball's going to carry further. So there's lots of factors there. So Tom L says, does the anti-roll motorcycle move apply to the driver or just to the irons? It applies to all clubs. So what he's talking about is basically what the move is. And the move is getting the club on plane and the face square as soon as possible in the downswing. Right? So if we're at the top of the swing, we want, as we're coming down the downswing, by about lead arm parallel, we want to get that club pretty much on plane, and we want to get that face pretty close to squaring as we're coming down. If we get it in that kind of position, right, then I can continue to turn through the ball and know I'm going to have that face square. I know I'm going to have that club in the slot. I'm going to be able to be very consistent. If I have it, if I have it kind of in a steep position, right, and the face open, then I'm going to have to make some sort of compensation to get the club to work from the inside and to get that face. I'm going to usually have to flip to get that face squared up and things like that. So to be more consistent, we want to get that club shallowing out, get that face squaring earlier. So that way we don't have to make those compensations. We don't have to have any unnecessary movement. And that applies to all clubs, whether you're hitting a wedge or you're hitting a driver, you're hitting an 8-iron, your 3-wood, you want to get that club on plane and square as soon as possible, so that way you don't have to make those compensations later. Excuse me. All right, so we have about 4 minutes left on my end. Like I said, there might be a little bit of lagginess on your end. But I got time for maybe a couple more if we got them. I thought we were going to be able to fill the rest of the time up with what we had, but got a few more minutes here if you got them. Hopefully it's not lagging too much on your end and we can get the questions. But I do have to go right at noon this time. Yesterday, I was able to stay on a little bit longer to answer everybody's questions, but I have a meeting here right after this. So, unfortunately won't be able to stay after today. And want to give you all a heads up. Friday, it's a possibility we may not have office hours. I'm off on Friday. And I'm still waiting to hear back from one of the instructors to see if they can do it. If not, it's possible we may not have office hours. So we got a question here from John. Says, with iron, I look just in front of the ball. Sometimes I thin a shot. What do you suggest to avoid thinning? So thinning is all about low point control. So what that means is, if you imagine my hula hoop here, the low point, typically if you're hitting it thin, it's because the low point is occurring at the ball, right? So, if my low point is occurring at the ball, my best case scenario is really a thin shot, unless the ball is sitting up like it's on a turf. I want my low point to be. So I think you're on the right track with what you're thinking about more in front. It could be that your low point is too front. That could be what's going on. So I would try to get an idea of where your low point is, and then adjust accordingly, right? So if your low point's occurring, kind of look at it on video. You can usually kind of see where the club's kind of coming down, bottoming out, and then working back up. That's where the low point is. So if you're looking on video and you're seeing you're way out in front of it and your club's low point's way out in here, you may want to not focus in front of the ball. You may want to just focus at the ball and see if that helps with the thin shots. If you're looking and you're seeing that you're kind of maybe hanging back a little bit and the low point is occurring at the ball or even before the ball and you're hitting the thin shots, then I'd really focus on getting your body forward and hitting down and through the ball instead. A good drill, real quickly, to go through that I would recommend for that would be to get in your setup here and then put your whole body forward like this and just take some half, three-quarter swing, hitting some shots, really focusing on hitting down and through, getting that divot in front. Hit some shots doing that, and then go back to your normal stance and do the exact same position. Try to get into that exact same position at impact, right? And I'm going to get my compression line to be too far forward and hit down and through the ball. But that would be only if your low point is occurring before the ball, which is typically where people go wrong hitting thin shots. Most of the time, it's not because the low point's too far forward. That'd be my guess, especially if you're already thinking about swinging and hitting the ground in front of the ball. It tells me you're doing that because you have a tendency to behind the ball. So you're probably still doing that. You probably just need to work on getting your body more forward to get that low point more in front. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We're right at noon, basically, right now. So thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everyone have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you all next time.